Gucci, Givenchy, and Kate Spade, just a few designer items gifted to Mayor Brandon Johnson.
So first of all, the pronunciation of those luxury brands from this local news reporter, classy, fancy, if you will, and I definitely appreciate it. Let's hear it one more time.
Gucci, Givenchy, and Kate Spade.
Again, I am definitely impressed. My pinky is officially up, and you should be impressed as well. But greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Sean, and the real meat and potatoes of this particular story is that Brandon Johnson, the corrupt mayor of the city of Chicago, the person who is going to the floor in order to defend the illegal immigrant criminals in the city of Chicago, has been caught basically having a gift room where he has accepted all these different various luxury gifts while being the mayor of the city of Chicago. Now, I'm from a time where this used to be called bribes, this used to be called bribery, but apparently Brandon Johnson is allowed to do whatever the hell he wants. He doesn't even have to resign from his position at the Chicago Teachers Union to be mayor, even though he's actively negotiating a contract against the Teachers Union. In theory, in reality, he's trying to give them everything, trying to borrow money on a high interest loan in order to bankrupt the city to give them more money, despite the fact that he is obviously going to be a beneficiary of that when he leaves office. But yeah, this gift scandal, absolute disaster for Brandon Johnson optically, although I think it should also be a disaster for him in terms of criminal charges, because bribery used to be a crime in the United States of America. On February 15th and February 16th, DebateCon 5 is happening. I will be debating on the 16th, which is the second day. The link to tickets are in the top of the description. It is in Newark, New Jersey, so if you live around the area, I hope to see you there.
It's okay to accept those items, but a new report by the Office of Inspector General says they weren't logged properly. The OIG says it had to send an official request to see the gift logbook.
So crazily enough, in the city of Chicago, for whatever reason, it is actually acceptable for the mayor of the city of Chicago to accept all these different various gifts from certain people, probably because they don't reach over a certain dollar amount. However, the only condition of accepting these gifts, or bribes if you will, is that you have to log them appropriately so that the public can know exactly what you're receiving as a member of office. So again, they don't limit or they don't basically outright ban the gifts that you could receive. You just have to explain it to the public, but Brandon Johnson never explains anything to the public, so he's essentially been hiding all of these different various items. And again, it just goes to show you how little he cares for the taxpayer, despite the fact that he says he's a man of the people. Again, remember, he was spending thousands upon thousands of dollars at a barber shop getting his haircut, even though, again, he's a guy, and getting your haircut should cost you in a major metropolitan area with tip no more than $40. Again, he's not even going to an actual salon where they overcharge the hell out of you. He's going to a regular barber shop.
The gifts range from a Gucci tote bag to a Montblanc pen to Hugo Boss cufflinks. Receiving them is not improper, according to the city's inspector general, but they have to be noted in a publicly available logbook. When agents for the city's independent inspector general's office went to access that book, they were met with roadblocks and denials from the mayor's team.
Now again, in this particular instance, Brandon Johnson does not appear to be facing any criminal charges. However, they did have a recommendation for the inspector that looked into this, that basically he has to make these gifts publicly available, or at least the knowledge of them publicly available, and actually open up this gift room where he's keeping all these different various items for the public to view them, or for inspectors to actually view them for both unannounced and announced inspections. But Brandon Johnson doesn't follow the rules. Brandon Johnson is probably going to accuse them of evil white racism and say, "Shut up, you evil white racist," because that's what he does.
Undercover Inspector General workers visited City Hall's 5th floor asking for access to gift logs that are supposed to be available to the public. They were denied. They were told to submit a Freedom of Information Act request, which they say was denied too.
So how this all went down is that the Office of the Inspector General actually showed up in the city of Chicago, and they requested a copy of the logbook so that they could document all the different potential various gifts that the city of Chicago was receiving, or that Brandon Johnson was receiving on behalf of the city of Chicago. However, they were denied this request despite the fact that they're the Office of the Inspector General, and obviously they should be able to inspect this and know what's going on, and they were told to file a Freedom of Information Act request in order to see these materials. And this is because Brandon Johnson, as we ultimately ended up figuring out, was not appropriately keeping records of these gifts because he's trying to obfuscate maybe not necessarily the gifts, which apparently are legal, but who is giving him the gifts, because unsurprisingly, we are likely to find out that he's probably getting a bunch of this stuff from teachers union heads as he is actively working to give them more money despite the fact that they are not improving Chicago's schools. So after this, officials at the Office of the Inspector General decided that they were going to file the Freedom of Information Act request, but rather than file as the Office of the Inspector General, they are described as filing this in a covert way. Essentially, they were trying to figure out if Brandon Johnson would deny this information to average everyday citizens, and guess what? They found out that's exactly what the office would do. They basically refused to respond to this particular request, and again, considering they were trying to inspect whether or not there was transparency in the city of Chicago government, considering they were trying to inspect the gifts that were received, it is quite telling that this information was not available for the public, especially because Brandon Johnson says that he is for the people, he does everything for the people, he definitely is in service to the people, but unless those people dareth ask him questions, then all of a sudden Brandon Johnson has no time for you. He needs you to move on and shut up, obey what he says, and if you don't obey what he says, he's gonna call you an evil white racist.
When they told Mayor Johnson's team who they really were, a spreadsheet of gifts was made available.
For many of these gifts, including Hugo Boss cufflinks and a personalized pen and some Gucci handbags and size 14 men's shoes, the gifts were listed as being located in the gift room.
Inspector General Deborah Witzberg's team then asked to see the gift room. And according to her just-released report, the city law department persisted in denying physical access to the gift room.
Is it possible that there are a bunch of Gucci handbags neatly on a shelf in a gift room at City Hall and no one's using them and nothing has gone wrong and everything's fine? Yes, that is possible, but we're not in a position for a lot of benefit of the doubt here.
So the OIG then sent an official document request to the mayor's office for the logbook and received a spreadsheet detailing 380 gifts accepted by the mayor's office, quote, on behalf of the city between February 2nd of 2022 and March 20th of last year. Former Mayor Lori Lightfoot's logs included entries for 144 gifts, while Mayor Brandon Johnson's logs contained 236 entries.
The spreadsheet they were given spanned the last 15 months of the Lori Lightfoot administration, where she received 144 gifts, and the first 10 months of the Johnson administration, where he received 236 gifts. In 70% of all of them, the gift giver is not identified.
So I think the number of gifts that are given to Brandon Johnson, quote unquote, on behalf of the city in this short period of time as compared to Lori Lightfoot's gifts are absolutely crucial, because essentially this covers about the last year or a little more than the last year in office that Mayor Lori Lightfoot was the mayor of the city of Chicago. However, Brandon Johnson has a much smaller amount of time in that it's around 10 months, because remember, he was sworn into office on May 15th of 2023. These logs only go up to March 20th of 2023, and they start back in February of 2022. So over a longer period of time, Lori Lightfoot received about 100 less gifts than Brandon Johnson, because Brandon Johnson is obviously, in my opinion, more corruptible than Lori Lightfoot. And it's absolutely crazy that residents in the city of Chicago managed to oust Lori Lightfoot, who is not a very good mayor, and find the one candidate that was worse than her in order to replace her. And that, of course, is Brandon Johnson, who has proven to be corrupt time and time again. Now again, Lightfoot's logs for about 14 months contained 144 gifts, while Brandon Johnson's logs contained 236 entries. Among the gifts given under the Johnson administration were Hugo Boss cufflinks, the handbags that were talked about in the open of the local news segment, and size 14 men's shoes, according to the OIG officials. Some gifts were stored in a gift room, and others were stored in Brandon Johnson's personal office. The OIG visited the 5th floor to do an unannounced inspection of the gift room and was denied access. Quote, when gifts are changing hands, perhaps literally in a windowless room in City Hall, there is no opportunity for oversight and public scrutiny of the propriety of such gifts, the identities or intentions of the gift givers, or what it means for gifts like whiskey, jewelry, handbags, and size 14 men's shoes to be accepted on behalf of the city, said Deborah Witzberg, the Inspector General for the City of Chicago. Under the Government Ethics Ordinance, city officials are generally prohibited from accepting gifts over $50 unless they are accepted on behalf of the city.
Where there's anything of value being exchanged, we would absolutely want to know whether those gifts are coming from people looking for influence in some way, whether those are lobbyists or people doing business with the city.
I've never even seen this room that they're talking about.
Mayor Johnson was asked about the investigation today.
I don't mean to make light of, this so-called investigation, but quite frankly, it bears very little. If people want a tour of this room, I'll sign up because I've never been to it myself.
So this is where things get extra sketchy, because the reason you're covering up all these different lavish gifts that you're receiving obviously could be that you don't want people to know who's giving it to you and what the terms are of those gifts, which, by the way, would be equivalent to bribes. Also, you're not allowed in the city of Chicago to personally accept gifts valued over $50. And as we know, expensive shoes, expensive handbags, and all this other stuff, those are definitely over $50. However, the loophole is you accept them on behalf of the city, but the idea that you're going to give Brandon Johnson shoes personally, Brandon Johnson cufflinks personally, Brandon Johnson women's handbags personally, and then say, oh, it's actually on behalf of the city, and that makes sense, even though those are distinctly personal items, is crazy in every possible way, and again, should be considered bribery. And again, if it's not bribery, why is Brandon Johnson covering up the receipt of those gifts as the mayor in the city of Chicago? Why is he denying the Inspector General's ability to inspect this gift room? And why is he keeping some of these gifts in his own personal office?
Johnson's team says they will transition to new policies on how gifts are accepted and will make the gift room available to the Inspector General, but as of today, they still have not.
When things happen behind closed doors, people have every reason to assume the worst.
Now look, to be 100% clear, there are a ton of reasons to not like Brandon Johnson. There are a ton of reasons to question his ethics and motivations. And in comparison to all the other things that he's done as the mayor of the city of Chicago, this pales in comparison to those other things. That being said, it is very indicative that the progressive, the person who is supposedly fighting against corruption, fighting against money in politics, is so quick to cover up each and every little bit of spending, each and every little bit of gift that he receives, cover up his association with the teachers union, when in reality, we see time and time again, these are corrupting influences. Now, of course, I want to know what you guys think about this down in the comments below. If you like this video, then show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Brandon Johnson accepting bribes on behalf of the city and not disclosing them. Till next time.